Hi guys, I'm Rex King. Welcome back to another episode of From the Archive. Well, if you've been following this show, at all, you probably noticed that I like talking about obscure movies that not many people have heard about. You don't get much more obscure than this. This is Armed Response. It was directed by the Beamer siblings, and I have literally nothing else to go on. You see, I couldn't find a single website about why this film was made or what went into making this film. And I also couldn't find box office numbers, and I couldn't really even find a critical review of this film. Now, granted, that last one I didn't look too hard. Rotten Tomatoes does have a 28% on it, but I didn't really read any of the reviews on there. So, needless to say, it probably had a negative reception. But to be honest, I still don't know how accurate that is, or how this film came about, or any of the other information I usually put in at this point in the review. So I'm just going to delve right into the story here. The story of Armed Response focuses on Kevin, played by Ethan Embry, and Bruce, played by Michael Gladys. They run a failing home security business. One day, Bruce comes up with this really weird plan to start stealing from the local houses to drum up some business. However, they end up stealing from the wrong house, the house that's owned by the drug dealer in the movie, played by Cary Elwes. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. And that's the basic setup here. So, yeah, this film does not have an overcomplicated story. It's pretty simple. Two friends have a struggling business and they want to try to save it, so they start robbing houses. Why they don't just decide to move their business to a different area? Because we're told that the only reason their business is failing is because, well, they're in a safe neighborhood. Apparently one of the safest neighborhoods ever. So why don't they just move their business to a neighborhood that would need home security products? I mean, if the current neighborhood you're in is not where your business is going to succeed, the simplest solution is to, well, move it if you can. And we never find out why they just can't do that or are unwilling to do that. Well, that's one of the problems. The other problem is, well, the plot that I just went over, that's 45 minutes of the movie overall. The other parts are a romantic subplot between Kevin and his girlfriend, played by Clea Duvall, and that's as interesting as watching paint dry. And that still doesn't make for the hour and a half runtime they wanted, so they added a bunch of celebrity cameos that don't add anything to the movie and just bring in characters that we are supposed to forget about the very next scene. Now, the film tries to justify these existences and choices by having the film ultimately be a story that is being told by a bartender to his patrons, and we're not supposed to believe that the story is 100% accurate, but that doesn't make the plot holes better. That just means you knew they existed. You could have fixed most of these problems and had a more interesting film. Instead, you decided to keep them in, and it makes the film lesser. And by having characters point out, oh, these are plot holes, you're just doing my job for me. Speaking of the characters, none of these characters are written all that well. Kevin is your standard hero character. He's supposed to be basically the one that the audience latches onto and follows through his perspective, but he's completely uninteresting. He has nothing of a personality. He really isn't someone we get to know all that well. We get to know Bruce better, but he's kind of an asshole and a jerk and just an all-around bad person who pushes everyone away for some selfish, stupid reason. Then there's the girlfriend character who also doesn't have an interesting personality or interesting character traits. Then there's our drug dealer, who's a drug dealer and isn't given any other personality or traits besides the fact that he's a drug dealer. None of these characters are worth making a movie around, and the performances, well, they're all over the place. You have characters like, you have performances like Bruce, played by Michael Gladys, and our drug dealer, played by Cary Elwes, and they're playing these characters very goofily, over the top, and overacting to the extreme, which would be fine if the other characters were performed like that, but instead, the characters performed by Ethan Embry and Clea Duvall are much more grounded and reserved, and again, not very interesting. And the performances they put on here don't elevate the characters at all, so it's a very mixed match of characters and performances, and it just doesn't work for the movie. Then you have the visuals, and I usually am nicer to films that have a lower budget, clearly, and are indie films, but this movie had a couple weird decisions, especially when it came to the lighting, which always felt off in every scene. I'm not quite sure what was going on here. I want to blame the budget, but I'm pretty sure I've seen lower budget films than this, and, well, their lighting was pretty good. And after watching the commentary that's on this DVD, the directors clearly knew what they were doing when it came to shot composition, but the lighting's just really off, and I'm not quite sure why. The music is really lazy. A bunch of beats we've heard 100 times before. There's a lot of usage of songs that are basically jukebox songs that you could just put on in the background and completely ignore. At the end of the day, Armed Response is probably not well known for a very good reason. This film is a big fat load of nothing. There is nothing interesting going on, there's no real personality on screen, and there is really nothing interesting to the story. When your main plot only takes up about 45 minutes of your runtime, you might want to consider writing a different type of story. At the end of the day, Armed Response is just not a good film. Now, does that mean the film is a buy, a stream which you can do on Freevee and Tubi, or is it an avoid altogether? Well, though the special features on this DVD are the commentary and gag reel, and they're not terrible. As you see, I have the DVD copy, not the Blu-ray copy. I usually try to strive to getting Blu-ray copies, but I don't even think there's a Blu-ray copy of this one available because I couldn't find one for sure. Anyway, I gotta say this film's an avoid altogether. There's no reason to watch it, like I said earlier, and there's definitely no reason to buy it. I regret having this thing. I really think this is a film that should be lost to history and completely ignored, like it currently is. I actually regret even highlighting it. Anyway, that's what I thought about Armed Response. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And next week, we'll be taking a look at hopefully a film that, well, will at least be memorable. Last Nights. And I'll see you then.